So the American Heart Association does not want you fasting. Go figure, right? We got red in the background in the theme of the American Heart Association, and we're talking about an article that they just came out with hot off the press. It's entitled 8-Hour Time Restricted Eating Linked to a 91% Higher Risk of Cardiovascular Death. So we're going to ask the simple questions and let you decide on the validity of this research. I'm Joe with Wellness Weigh-In. Let's go. All right, so I'm going to let AHA off the hook just a little bit. They do state in here that this is preliminary research presented at a current conference, and that the views of the research don't necessarily reflect those of the American Heart Association. However, what strikes me about this is they take the conclusion of the research and they turn it into the title of this article. Now, if you're like me, I do a lot of headline research, right? Where you're just flipping through, looking at headlines. And if I'm none the wiser, I'm going to look at the very title of this article and take it as gospel truth, and I might skip over this, not asking some of the simple questions and some of the harder questions about the validity of this research. So the article goes on to talk about what intermittent fasting and time-restricted eating actually is, how it breaks up your day into two different periods, a fasting period and a feasting period. And then also how intermittent fasting has gained a lot of popularity recently. It then talks about some of the study details and some of the background information. And I want to call out at least a couple things here. And this is where your wheels should start turning and a lot of questions should start to pop up in your mind. So number one, the study included approximately 20,000 adults in the U.S. with an average age of 49 years. Also, the study participants were followed for a median length of 8 years and a maximum of 17 years. The study also included data from NHANES, that's a survey, participants who were at least 20 years old and who had completed a 2-day, 24-hour dietary recall questionnaire within the first year of enrollment. So the first question that comes to my mind is, what are the participants eating? Are they on the standard American diet? Are they eating donuts and cereals and candy all day? Or are they on some sort of strict, regimen? Are they on a ketogenic diet or a carnivore diet? I think that's a really important detail, is what they're eating. Not just that they're eating within an 8-hour time frame. That's good information, but what are they actually eating? So my next question would be, how are the participants recalling their time-restricted eating pattern? They were followed for a median of 8 years and a max of 17. What was the method to make sure that they were tracking their intermittent fasting protocols all along the way, if they even did that? I can tell you I do intermittent fasting all the time, but my protocol changes depending on how I'm feeling, if I'm doing any sort of challenge. I can tell you I live a 24 lifestyle, meaning I fast for 20 hours, eat during a 4-hour time frame, but not all the time. If I'm doing a challenge like I am this week, I'm doing a 16-8 protocol. Were those things accounted for in these participants? Are they counting on memory? That's another question I have. Our memory is very poor, especially when it comes to diet. Some of the people that I coach, I'll ask them what their blood sugar is if they're diabetic, what their fasting blood sugar is. And a lot of times they'll tell me, it's 110, 120. And we want it essentially to be under 100. So I'll ask them what they ate. And they'll say, I ate nothing but good stuff. And I say, let's list it out. And as we're listing it out, they're starting to realize, oh yeah, I forgot I ate that. Oh yeah, I forgot I had that bowl of mashed potatoes or that, piece of candy. And, that's just the day before, So imagine if you're followed for 8 to 17 years, can you recall with great deal of accuracy how you were eating all along that time? Another question would be, what was the health like of the participants prior to the study? Did they already have some of the cardiovascular issues? Did they have type 2 diabetes already? What were the social determinants of health that affected them? Were they consuming a lot of alcoholic beverages? Did they smoke tobacco? Did they have any type of illicit drug use? Those are all valid questions and important bits of information that we need to ask about. All right, so let's read on and see if it answers any of our questions. It says here, the study's limitations included its reliance on self-reported dietary information, which may be affected by a participant's memory or recall, which may not accurately assess typical eating patterns. So they're telling you right off the bat here, we went off their memory. We went off their ability to recall what they were eating. And you know what? We know it might not be accurate, but we're still going to use it. So right there, that should call into question, is this valid research? So the article goes on to say, factors that may also play a role in health outside of daily duration and cause of death were not included in the analysis. So what they're basically admitting here is that of all the information that they had and didn't have, they took 2 bits of information out: daily duration of eating and cause of death. And the rest of the information they threw out. So anything about what they ate, anything about, pre-existing conditions, cardiac issues, vascular issues, social determinants of health, all of those stuff we talked about, including drug use, tobacco use, they didn't even consider in their analysis. Now, you would think those things would be a major factor, but they only took daily duration of eating and cause of death to make correlation or causation. Again, I'm not a researcher, but there's a lot of questions that start to pop up about this research. The article goes on to quote a gentleman by the name of Christopher D. Gardner of Stanford University in Stanford, California. And he basically calls 2 details out. The first one is, what is the nutrient quality of the diets typical of the different subsets of the participants? So the study broke the participants into different groups or subsets based on the duration that they were eating. And he wants to know, just like we do, what did they eat? Did they eat the standard American diet with all of its junk food, processed foods, sugars, and carbohydrates? Or were they eating on the opposite end of the spectrum, a carnivore diet or a ketogenic diet? I highly doubt it, but we need to know that information. That's super important. The second detail he calls out may make you laugh. He says, it needs to be emphasized that categorization into the different windows of time-restricted eating was determined on the basis of just 2 days of dietary intake. Now, again, correct me if I'm wrong here in the comments, please. But what this is telling me is that in order to fall into the 8-hour bucket or subset or group, you just had to eat for 8 hours for only 2 days. That's pretty crazy. Again, us fasters, we fast for long periods, days, weeks, months, even years for many people. These participants only had to show that they ate in that window for just 2 days. That changes the meaning of the title of this article just a little bit when it says that, restricting your time to just 8 hours causes an increase in risk to 91% that you'll die of a cardiovascular related issue. Christopher Gardner goes on to say, it will also be critical to see a comparison of the demographics and baseline characteristics across the groups. So basically, he wants to know more information like weight, stress, traditional cardiometabolic risk factors, and other factors associated with adverse cardiovascular outcomes. To which I say, yeah, totally. We need to know more information about the participants and how they differed from group to group. Bottom line is, we need more information. Look, I'm sure that this study was put together by a lot of smart people with way more letters after their name than I have. But when they put this conclusion out there, I'm going to ask the questions. So I urge you, take all this stuff with a grain of salt. Even when the details finally do come out, ask the questions, be skeptical, don't be afraid to weigh in. I'm Joe with Wellness Weigh In. Until next time, I'm out.